So we're going to go through this review sheet of Chapter 8. A lot of these words are so familiar to us by now. Perimeter is plus, right? Perimeter is adding up all the sides. And so if we add up all the sides, we're always going to use plane units. So what I mean by that is like centimeters, inches, right? If we add up these sides, we're adding up all the sides. So 7.2 plus 2.8, doesn't that add up to 10? And then if I go all the way around, that should be 20. 2.5, so 2.5 is for each side, so every pair of sides is 5, 10, and then 15, right? 5, 10, yep, 15 inches. Well, we always have to make sure that we have the right units, so here we see millimeters, here we see centimeters, so we're going to convert that to 30 millimeters. And then if we add that up, that's like 68, and 68 is what, 136? So 136 millimeters, always having the units. Again, we put it in a different color to just remind you that you have to change 2 feet, to 24 inches. So then that's 34, and then what's that, 42 inches. So you always want to make sure that you have the right units. All right, so then moving on here, if the perimeter is 20, and that looks like a square, right? So 20 divided by 4 is going to give me 5 centimeters. Here, this side's also going to be 12, so I have 24. If I subtract that, I have 14, and that gets divided by 2, 7 centimeters. Hexagon is 6 sides, so 5 times 6 is 30. Pentagon is 5 sides, 10 times 5 is 50 millimeters, plane units. Finding the number of sides, we're just going to divide, so this is going to be 9 sides, 81 divided by 9, and then 50 divided by 10, 5 sides. When you count the area, you're counting the squares, so those two would add up to 2 whole squares. Here, let's see if I count these, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that makes a square, and that makes a square, so altogether 6 squares. If I want to have a rectangle with a perimeter of 14, then that means any 2 sides are going to add up to 7, and then they're also going to multiply to 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. If I have a 4 by 3 rectangle, that's going to have a perimeter of 12 if you add them up. A perimeter of 14 if you add them up, and then have 12 squares in the middle for the area. So it's always going to add up to half the perimeter and multiply to the area. So numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 8 and multiply to 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. These are numbers that add to 8, and in other words, all 4 sides would add to 16, and then they multiply to 15, so you have 15 squares in there. And I put a couple of those on because I know that those are hard. So the perimeter is 10. That means the numbers have to add to 5 and multiply to 6. So that's going to be 3 and 2. 3 and 2. Add to half the perimeter again is add to 5 and multiply to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. So that's going to be 4 and 1. So that's our general. Then we move into specific shape. So the first shape is a rectangle. Formula for a rectangle's area is base times height, or you could say length times width. And then we remember area, square area. So we always use square units for area. So here, 8 times 2 is 16 feet squared. 5 times 5, 25 inches squared. You always have to have the units the same, so we're going to convert that to 20 millimeters and then multiply that to 500 millimeters squared. Similarly, 1 foot is going to change to 12 inches. 12 times 2 is 24 inches squared. If a square has a side of 7, so that's going to be an area of 7 times 7, or 49 inches squared. Here you see that star, so I got to remind the units here. 2 centimeters changes to 20 millimeters. 11 times 20 is 220 millimeters squared. Finding the missing side here, we're just going to divide. 296 divided by 37 is 8, and then 48 divided by 4 is 12. Notice that the base and the height have plane units. Here I'm going to find, let's see, the x and the y. Remember, like from Tetris, the 11 plus 7 would add up to 18. And if I look at the other way, 6 plus 4 would add up to 10. So if I'm going to go all the way around the sides, those would add up to 56 centimeters. Then when I do the area, so here 10 times 11 is how I'm getting 110 centimeters squared. And then here that x was 7, so 6 times 7 is 42 centimeters squared. To find the total area, I'm going to add the 110 plus the 42, 152 centimeters squared. Similarly over here, if I want to find the x, 5 plus 2 is equal to 7, so that's 2 feet. If I go the other direction, 5 plus 3 is equal to 8, so that's 8 feet. If I go all the way around, meaning adding up all the sides there, that's how I get 30 feet squared. If I want to find the area of rectangle A, you got to make sure you multiply the right two numbers. It's 8 times 2 is 16 feet squared. And then here, 5 times, remember that y was 3, is 15 feet squared. And then, of course, 16 plus 15, 41 feet squared. Oops, actually it's 31 feet squared. Sorry, 31 feet squared. All right, moving on. Parallelogram. The formula is still base times height, right? You want to make sure that the two numbers you multiply make the t, so 5 times 10 is 50 yards squared. 17 times 12, remember you can use a calculator, 204 centimeters squared. 4 times 6, it's okay that the height is outside the parallelogram, and 9 times 5 is 45 meters squared. When they give you the base and the height, it said watch the units, so I'm going to change that to 15 millimeters. 7 times 15, 105 millimeters squared. 3 yards is the same thing as 6 feet, and 6 times 2 is 12 feet squared. Actually, wait, I messed up, didn't I? 3 yards is actually 9 feet. Sorry about that. 3 yards is actually 9 feet. So 9 feet times 2 feet, 18 feet squared. Here I'm going to divide. 120 divided by 12 is 10 yards. 60 divided by 10 is 6. I guess that's meters. Moving on here, the area is given. Find the missing side, so we're going to divide. 153 divided by 17, 9. 144 divided by 12, 12. 40 divided by 5, 8. 54 divided by 9, 6. This brings us to the triangle, and so in the triangle, you've heard me say it a lot, in the triangle we divide by 2, or another way to write that, 1/2 base times height. So the area here is 9 times 4 divided by 2, 18 feet squared. 5 times 4 divided by 2, and you don't have to write that out, I'm just showing you how I'm getting 10 yards squared. 10 times 5 divided by 2, 25 millimeters squared. And then you want to make sure in the right triangle, it's actually the two legs are the base and the height, 30 centimeters squared. The height can be outside the triangle, so here we see it outside the triangle, 15 centimeters squared. Here there's no picture, but we know we're just going to multiply those numbers and divide by 2, 25 inches squared. When the units are different, you've got to convert them, so 2 centimeters is 20 millimeters. 20 times 11 divided by 2, so that's going to be 10 divided by 2, or 110 millimeters squared. And then 1 foot, 12 inches, 12 times 4 divided by 2 is 24 inches squared. Area, squarea. Pythagorean Theorem, we've done this a lot, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And you're going to recognize some of these numbers as Pythagorean triples. When you take the square root of 64, of course, it's 8. Then it wants me to find the area of the triangle, which is base times height divided by 2, which is 24. And there weren't any units with that one. Here, my equation would be a squared plus 40 squared equals 41 squared. We've done this one a lot as well, another Pythagorean triple. This turns out to be 9. Square root of 81 is 9. So 9 times 40 divided by 2 is 180, no units. The last one is another Pythagorean triple that we're familiar with, that 5, 12, 13. If you know that by heart, I mean, you can just kind of know it by heart, I guess. And then 5 times 12 divided by 2 there would be 30. Here, given the area, find the base or height. So this one people think it's just 12 divided by 3. But it's really not, because if you think about it, it's like 3 times what divided by 2 gives me 12. Or 1.5b gives me 12. The answer is actually 18 millimeters. So here again, 12 times h divided by 2 is 18, or 6h is 18. The height is 3 meters, plane units. 12 times h divided by 2 is 48. So 6h is 48, that's 8 centimeters. And then 6 times b divided by 2 is equal to 45, or 3b is 45, or 15 yards. These scale factor questions, remember from chapter 7, the scale factor is this reduced ratio of the pair of corresponding sides, so 1/2. And then what we learned is that the square of the scale factor is the ratio of the areas. So here, actually, if you find the area, which is 2 times 3 divided by 2, which would be 3, and here it is 4 times 6 divided by 2, which is 12, and then 3 over 12 reduces to 1/4. So you see that the square of the scale factor is equal to the ratio of the areas. Or here, the scale factor is going to be 6 over 4 or 3 over 2. Area 6 times 3 divided by 2 for that triangle is 9. Area here, 4 times 2 divided by 2 is 4. So the area of the ratio of the areas is 9/4. Again, the square of the scale factor. And then you could just finish this one out, would be 1/2. 5 times 2 divided by 2 is 5 for that area. 10 times 4 divided by 2 is 20. Ratio of the areas 5 over 20 is 1/4. Again, the square of the scale factor. So if I just give you the scale factor, if I square it, which is 1/3 times 1/3, I get the ratio of the areas. Or 2/7 times 2/7 is 4 over 49, the ratio of the areas. Trapezoid formula, base plus base times height divided by 2. Base plus base times height divided by 2. The nice thing here is we didn't have a lot of units, so 4 plus 8 is 12 times 3 divided by 2 ends up being 18. 12 plus 15, this one does have units, times 10 divided by 2, 135 meters squared. Again, you're going to want to have a calculator. Even when it's sideways, the base is here, 4 plus 8 times 5 divided by 2, and that turns out to be 30 centimeters squared. Here you got to convert that height to 20 millimeters, so base plus base is 4 plus 6 times 20 divided by 2, and that works out to be 100 millimeters squared. Good. Here, these a little harder. You got to find the height with the Pythagorean theorem. So the height here, if we do 6 squared plus h squared equals 10 squared, or 36 plus h squared equals 100, or 64. So we know that the height is 8. Once we find that the height is 8, and it's really 8 yards, then I can do my base plus base, remembering that the whole base there is actually 32. So 32 plus 12 is base times the height, which I figured out was 8, and then divided by 2. So when it's all said and done, I get 176 yards squared. Similar here, now this one, I think that 9 is meant to go through that whole thing. So this is 3 and this is 6, because that adds up to 9. So h squared plus 3 squared equals 5 squared. This is our classic 3, 4, 5 triangle that we've seen a million times. So the height is 4 centimeters. Then for the area, base plus base times height divided by 2. At the end of the day, we have 30 centimeters squared. All right, we're almost done here. So here we're going backwards with the area of the trapezoid. So 6 plus 9, which is 15, times h divided by 2 equals 30. 15 divided by 2 is 7.5h equals 30. And if I solve that, I get h is equal to 4. And don't forget the units. Same thing, 3 plus 5, I'm just going to write 8 times h divided by 2 is 8, or 4h equals 8, so h is 2. Sometimes people can figure those out in their head, but most of the time I say you got to write them down, especially these. B plus 18 times 10 divided by 2 is 135. Or b plus 18 times 5 is equal to 135. You could distribute the 5, but I think it's a little bit easier to divide both sides by 5. 135 divided by 5 is equal to 27. And then when I subtract 18 from both sides, I get 9. Same thing here, b2, or I'm just going to call it b plus 15 times 12 divided by 2 equals 198. Or b plus 15 times 6 equals 198. Dividing both sides by 6, b plus 15 is equal to 33, so b is equal to 18 meters. Our last couple shapes, the formulas are a little bit similar, so remember the rhombus formula, diagonal times diagonal divided by 2. I just abbreviated that. So 12 times 20 divided by 2 is 120 inches squared. You take the whole diagonal, so that's why we put the star there. PM was 5, the whole diagonal is 10. QM was 6, the whole diagonal is 12 divided by 2. So that turns out to be 60 centimeters squared. Here you got to look at it RT. Okay, that's the whole thing. So 8 times 8 divided by 2 is 32 centimeters squared. And if the diagonals are 6 and 8, you don't even have to draw a picture, 24 inches squared. Polygon is apothem times perimeter divided by 2. The apothem is the mini height, so mini height times 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 when you go all the way around for the perimeter divided by 2. That works out to be 45 centimeters squared. Mini height is 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 4 is 20 for the perimeter, so mini height times perimeter divided by 2, 20 centimeters squared. Mini height is 4. The perimeter there, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 divided by 2, so we get 32 inches squared. And then a pentagon has 5 sides. 5 times 6 is 30 times 4 divided by 2, so that works out to be 60 centimeters squared. Perfect. Last page. These are our either total area or shaded area. So in total area, we know we add. So we find the area of the rectangle, which is 5 times 11, 55. Don't forget the units. Parallelogram is 11 times 3, 33 feet squared. Since we're doing the total area, we add 88 feet squared. Here, the area of the rectangle is 12 times 8, or 96 feet squared. The rhombus, the parallelogram inside, base times height, is 30. And now this is shaded, and we know that shaded we subtract. Parallelogram here, 11 times 7 is 77 centimeters squared. We got 5 times 8 is 40 centimeters squared. Shaded subtract 37 centimeters squared. Don't forget that you're going by the formula for that shape. So 12 times 4, of course, 48. When you do the triangle, don't forget, divides by 2, so it's only 15 centimeters squared. And then this is total, so we add 63 centimeters squared. Same thing here, 10 times 5 is how I'm getting 50, and then the triangle is 10 times 6 divided by 2, or 30, and that's going to be added to 80 feet squared. Back to another shaded one. 10 times 8 is 80 feet squared. 7 times 6 divided by 2, 21 feet squared. And I'm going to subtract those to 59 centimeters squared. A few more here, and then we'll be done. So a few more here. Let's see. 12 times 6 is going to be 72 centimeters squared. When I do that triangle, it looks like the base is 6 and the height is 6. If I divide that by 2, I get 18 centimeters squared. Again, shaded is subtract 54 centimeters squared. Here, the big shape is a triangle, so I divide by 2, 45 centimeters squared. The small shape is a rectangle. I do not divide by 2. Those are, again, subtract, so it's 10 centimeters squared. The triangle's the big shape, so we got to do base times height divided by 2, which is 12 times 14 divided by 2, or 84 centimeters squared. 5 times 5 there is 25 centimeters squared, and I subtract 59 centimeters squared. Phew, last one. 8 times 10 is 80. 6 times 5 is 30. Those are subtract, so I get 50. 12 times 10 is 120. 8 times 6 divided by 2 is 24. If I subtract there, 96 meters squared. And the last one, the rectangle there, is 72 inches squared. And then when I do the rhombus, it is in the middle, it's divided by 2, or 36 inches squared, so I subtract. And there we have it, the review of Chapter 8. Done.